Hey everyone, this is the video to accompany the night photography class for Calgary Amateur Photographers Group. And we're starting out with images here that we took at Crescent Heights overlooking Calgary. This is the original image. As you can see, it's a little bit dark. And this is the edited image that we're going to try and get to. In the original image, you can see we lose a lot of detail in the shadows. And in this image, we bring it to life. We actually go in and we're going to recover details out of the shadows so it looks closer to what the human eye will see. Pressing the Y key will take us to a before and after split view, and you'll see all the controls for this view, split view are in the toolbar, and if you don't see the toolbar you have to press the T button to toggle it on and off. You can see it appears and disappears. And down here we see the controls for looking at the before and after images. So now we have a split view you can choose from. You can zoom in, you can click and drag and move things around. It's just nice because it really shows you the effect of your editing as you go along. Okay, so we're going to go and select an original image to begin editing. And I'm going to kind of talk a little slower and try and go a little slower through this part so you can keep up in the video. And just remember, in the video you can press the space key to pause at any time. If you need to keep up, you can always rewind as well. Okay, so when we press the G key, it's going to bring us to this thumbnail view. And if I press the space bar in Lightroom, it'll take us to the full view of whatever thumbnail we have selected. So I'm going to press the G key again and just want to kind of find an image um, that looks a bit darker once the sun had started going down. Probably this one here for me is what I would pick. So once I pick it, I just hit the space bar and it brings it up. And you want to now make sure you are in the develop module. If you look in the upper right here where my cursor pointing, we're in the library module. So just go and click on the develop. Now you're in the develop module. And just a couple of things about the develop module. On the left side and the right side, you will have these panels. If you don't have these panels, they might be hidden. You can hide them and unhide them by pressing the tab key on your keyboard, just like that. And also in these panels, we'll look at the left one here, you'll see on the very left side there's these scroll bars. It's a very thin little scroll bar. And it's annoying to try and click on and use, but you can use it to scroll up and down to see all the different containers. So what I like to do just to make it easier to use, just go to one of these container headers and right click on it. And on a Mac, I'm not sure what the equivalent of a right click is. It might be a command click, if I recall correctly. But once you're here, there's a collapse all mode. So if you collapse all, then you can see all the panels, and then you can just expand the one you need to use when you need to use it. And the same on the right side. There's all these panels and this skinny little scroll bar. So I just do the same thing. I'm just going to collapse all. This makes it easy for you to follow along to what I'll be doing. Okay, the next thing we want to do is in the right panel, expand the basic controls. So we've done that. And here you see we have white balance. we have tone control and presence. So the first thing we really want to do is adjust the tone of this image to try and bring out some details. At the very top of the screen, you can see a histogram, which may be collapsed or uncollapsed, but it just shows you how the tone and lighting is on the image. And we can see everything is kind of over to the left. It's really dark. If we go down to the basic controls and I click on the exposure and move it right, you can see how the histogram responds. Here the image is brighter, we got more details. But the issue is once we brighten the image so that we can see everything else, then the sky and the city become kind of washed out. So here's the way we're going to do this. I'm just going to reset my exposure, and I can do that just by double clicking on the exposure label here. And I'm going to go over to the highlights. I'm going to pull it all the way down, the shadows all the way up, and the whites all the way down, and the blacks all the way up. So now it's bringing out a bit more detail without losing so much contrast. And at this point, you could just turn the brightness up just a little bit if you want. And now we've got something that looks like this. So this doesn't look great. I mean, it's low contrast. It doesn't have any impact. So next thing you want to do after you've adjusted your highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks is maybe increase the contrast a bit. And that's right here. Maybe something like that. And maybe increase the brightness a bit more. You just have to kind of play with it till it looks good. You don't want to overdo it. So now we have something that looks a lot better, as we can see in the before and after when I press the Y key. Okay, so once we've done this, next thing we want to do is look at the presence controls down here. We generally don't want to mess around with these too much. Sometimes I like to just turn the clarity up just a bit, not too much. If you go too much, then you get this awful kind of look. So I keep it under 40, just a bit. Maybe I'll leave it around 30. I think that looks okay. And of course you can zoom in and out just by clicking on the image. So this is looking a lot better. And at this point I would go up to the white balance here and adjust it if you don't like the way it looks. To me this has kind of a bluish type of tinge in the grass. The grass doesn't look green. So I might want to just click on the temperature slider and add a little warmth to the image. Another way to do it is you can go to the drop down menu and you can just select different white balance settings like daylight or shade, things like that, and find something that you like. For me, I'm just going to use the slider just to give a little more warmth, and I think that's fine. When you make these tone control adjustments, sometimes the image can look a little oversaturated, so you want to be careful for that. You don't want to be doing things like this, turning the saturation all the way up, creating these really funky looking images, or messing with the vibrance too much. It can just really, I don't know, I think it spoils your image when you get this too much, and I see a lot of people do that. So what I suggest you do, I'm just going to reset my vibrance and saturation, is just adjust it a little bit, but not too much, whatever works well for your taste. You just don't want to overdo it. So I'm just going to increase the vibrance a little bit. And you don't have to increase the vibrance. You can go the other way. You can take it all the way down and try and just create a different kind of look, whatever you want. So this is an area where you need to just experiment a little bit. So I'm going to put it about 20. I think that's a good amount. It's not too much. It looks pretty good. Shift M, or pardon me, Shift Y to do the split screen. And you can see there's a significant difference. Okay, so once that's done, next thing you want to do is maybe look at the composition of the image and crop it. So here's the crop control up here. And you see there's a little lock here, which you can click on and off. If you leave the lock locked, then it's going to, when you adjust the crop, it's going to maintain the aspect ratio of the image. So you can see that the ratio of the square of the cropping remains consistent. And if you unlock it, then you can just adjust it and use whatever crop ratio you want. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not planning to print these images to any standard size or anything, so they're just going to be on the internet. So I'm just going to go with something like this. And you just crop to your taste. And click done. And now we've got an image that looks pretty decent. So once you have your image cropped, there's a couple of other things you can do. Now, if you have a dirty sensor, you might see some spots in your image. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And in the top left, you see we have a navigator panel where you can click that box and drag it around. So just click it and drag it around and look for spots on the image. There's a little spot there. Maybe that's a star or something in the distance. It's a little blurry because there's probably some camera shake. So you could go up to the spot removal tool by Q, select it, and just use your middle mouse button to resize your cursor. Select the spot, and it will fix it. And again, just look around for any kind of specks of dust in your sensor. This looks pretty good, so not too worried about it. And once you're done with the spot healing, you click the done button, and then just click on the picture to zoom out again. So this looks good. One thing I like to do, there's not much going on with the sky here. We don't have any interesting clouds or anything like that that really emphasize the sunset. So I'm going to put a graduated filter on there to darken the sky a bit. And that is this control right here, which you can get by pressing the M key. Then you just go to about the center middle of the screen, you click and you drag down. And as you move your mouse left and right, you'll see you can change the angle. You want to try and keep it horizontal. Maybe something like that. Then over in the right panel, you just bring your exposure down a little bit. So you can see the effect it has. Which I think it looks kind of nice, and you can just click and move things around a bit for the graduated filters. Until you get something you like, and then you click the done button. So this image is, I think it's pretty well done. You can go in and do other things too. For example, on the filter panel here, you can click on an adjustment brush, K, and just click somewhere on something you want to paint. Maybe I want to brighten up the buildings just a little bit. So I would just click on there and maybe just paint the buildings a little bit. You can see that I'm painting into the sky a little bit. So you want to hold your Alt key down to try to maybe erase it a little bit and change the size of your brush just to try and get a more controlled mask on this object you're painting. And if you want to see your mask, you just press the O key. You can see uh, where the effect will be. You can just leave that on and turn on while you paint and erase until you got things masked nicely. Of course, there's other techniques around doing this beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here, though. So once you feel good with it, press the O to turn off the mask. And over in the right panel, you can then adjust how much brightness you want. And you don't want too much. Just want, in my opinion, just a very little bit. You can even adjust the contrast a bit. And you can see I accidentally adjusted the texture, so I'm just going to reset that. So you can just go through here, these controls, and you can apply a filter effect just to the area where you've put the mask. And all I've done is just increase the exposure and the contrast a little bit. I think that's good. I'm going to click done. And we're almost completed. The very last step I would suggest here is to go into the, well, it's two steps actually. One is to go into a lens correction panel and just turn on remove chromatic aberration and enable profile correction. That'll just fix a little bit of distortion and any chromatic aberration, which you shouldn't have anyways at this aperture that we use for these images. And under the detail tab, I would say set your sharpening to about 75%, thereabouts. And set your luminance to maybe about 25. So luminance and sharpening should have probably add up to about 100 as a rule of thumb. Not to be exact, in my opinion, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. That just luminance just gets rid of a bit of noise. And I'm just going to zoom in here. We'll take a look at this image. It looks good, but I think that the sharpening is applied to everything, and the way you find out is by using this masking slider and hold down your Alt key, and then you just click on that masking slider and you can see where the effect is applied. It's applied to everything. So just slide to the right until you just see the lines of the image, because that's where you want to apply the sharpness. Just like that. And on the detail panel, you'll see there's a little switch. You can toggle on and off to see the effect. So here's with no sharpening, and here's with the sharpening. So it looks good. It's not overdone. I think it looks pretty good. Click to zoom out. And for me, I would say this is more or less a completed image at this point. And if we take a look at the before and after, Shift Y, you can see it's a big difference. It's a big improvement. So finally, once you've got your image looking the way you want, you're ready to export your image, which you can just do by right-clicking on your image and going down to the export. And if you're exporting to like Facebook, then the settings I use for Facebook, you just specify whatever folder you want it to go to. But the important bit here is I go JPEG, quality 100, definitely want quality of 100. And I just resize the fit along the long edge of 1800 pixels at 72 pixels per inch because that's the most your computer monitors generally display, and mobile devices as well. And that's it. It would be ready to export. You just click the export button and it's done. So that's the editing of the cityscape. So practice that and see what type of results you can get.